Hi everybody, welcome to the UMA Alumni Association's November webinar, Building Your Budget. My name is Alexis and I'm the Alumni Engagement Coordinator at UMA. Jonathan Reynolds will be your speaker during today's webinar. Jonathan will be discussing several ways that you can create, organize, and revisit your budget throughout the year. Before we begin, there are a few housekeeping items that we want to cover. To give you guys a quick breakdown of the webinar, Jonathan will speak for roughly 20 minutes and leave about 10 minutes for the question and answer session. You can send your questions at any time in the questions box and we'll collect them and address as many as possible at the end. If you experience audio issues during the webinar, we recommend exiting out of your current browser and opening the webinar in a different browser. For example, close Chrome and open Internet Explorer. We also recommend closing out of other pages and applications to help the platform run as smooth as possible. We also wanted to let you know that you are muted to prevent noise interference during the webinar. So if you have a question, be sure to send it in the questions box since we are unable to hear you. Last but not least, the webinar is being recorded and will be sent to participants to view shortly after the webinar concludes. So take it over.
Thanks, Alexis. Good morning, everyone. First off, I want to just thank you all for taking the time out of your busy schedules to attend our webinar on budgeting today. Before we get started, I'd just like to take a moment to introduce myself. My name is Jonathan Reynolds, and I'm a senior manager here in the Student Finance Department in UMA's Financial Literacy Services Department. I've worked in UMA's Student Finance Department for 6 years, the last 2.5 of that managing the Financial Literacy Services team. I have a bachelor's degree in business administration from Olivet Nazarene University in Bourbonnais, Illinois, and I am 2 classes away from completing my MBA at St. Leo University, which is here in St. Leo, Florida. To kick things off, I'd like to begin with a survey. How many of you have experience building a budget? Feel free to answer the poll on the slides. We're going to close it in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so I'm seeing a lot of yeses and a lot of no's. So for those of you that have some experience, hopefully there's some things in here that you can take away along with maybe some review. Hopefully there's a little bit for everybody to walk away with tonight. So feel free to share your comments as well. We're going to start with setting financial goals. So before you begin building your budget, it's important to start with setting 1 or more goals. Similar to taking a trip, you need to know where you're going before you begin your travels. Your financial goals should be SMART. And by SMART, I don't mean they need to be things you might hear on Jeopardy. SMART is an acronym that stands for specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-based. When creating a list of your financial goals, ask yourself these questions about each one of your goals. Is this goal specific? Can this goal be measured? Is this goal achievable? Is this a realistic goal? Is this goal time-based? If you answer no to any of these questions, you may want to consider revising that goal. So let's go ahead and look at a few SMART goals together. First one is save $500 by June. It's specific and measurable because by the time June rolls around, you should be able to look at your savings account and see whether you have saved $500. It's time-based because it has a target date of June. And for the sake of this example, we'll just assume that this is realistic and achievable for you. Pay off my credit card in 1 year. This goal is also specific and measurable because you know the current balance of the credit card and you know the exact amount you want the balance to be, $0. This goal is time-based because it has a definite end date of 1 year from now. And again, we're just going to go ahead and assume that for the sake of this example, the current balance of the credit card is such that it could realistically be paid off in a year's time. Put $25 in a college savings account for my daughter or son each month for 1 year. This goal is specific because the amount we are saving, $25 per month, is clearly defined and measurable. It's time-based because we know we want to save that amount for 1 year. And once again, we're just going to assume that $25 each month is a realistic amount for us to be able to save. The next thing you want to do before creating your budget is organizing your expenses. So after you've created 1 or more SMART goals, this is where you start organizing those expenses. Collect all your receipts over the course of 1 month. This should include your monthly bills, your student loan paperwork, and any other miscellaneous receipts from purchases that you have made. Keep all these records in a central location until it is time to begin creating your budget. Now, there are several different methods you can use when creating your budget. If you visit the Alumni page on our website, you will see a link to financial tools. So I suggest jotting this URL down. It's www.ultimatemedical.edu/alumni/financial-tools-for-alumni/. There you will find 2 Excel budgeting spreadsheets, one for a monthly budget and one for an annual budget. If you look on the screen, you will see what these budget templates will look like. These are available at no cost to you. If you are like me and spend a lot of time on your smartphone, there are a variety of smartphone apps available as well. Many banks offer budgeting tools on their apps, so if you do any online banking, you may have already seen some of these. And finally, some people choose to use the tried and true method of pen and paper. My sister learned a lot about budgeting from our grandmother, so if you were to go to her house and look on top of her refrigerator, you would find a notebook with a list of every purchase scrawled in pencil. The big takeaway here is that there's no wrong way to keep track of your budget. Just use the method that works for you, and know that it's okay to change your mind if you decide to switch things up. You should begin your budget by recording your net income. This is your income after taxes, Social Security, and other deductions are taken out of your paycheck. Some people refer to this as take-home pay. To find your net income, look for the dollar amount listed on your pay stub as net income. You could also simply use the amount displayed on your paycheck itself, which is the amount you actually receive. Remember to add each of your paychecks for an entire 1 month period. If you get paid every other week, you would have 2 amounts to add. If you get paid weekly, you should have 4 amounts to add. After recording your net income, you will subtract your expenses. Your expenses will be either fixed, meaning they stay the same each month, or variable, meaning their amounts will vary from month to month. Start with subtracting your fixed expenses, such as your rent or mortgage, utilities, car payment, student loan payment, insurance, and savings. After your fixed expenses are recorded, begin subtracting your variable expenses, such as groceries, gas, entertainment, and shopping expenditures. When you've finished listing all of your monthly expenses, it's time to evaluate your budget. So here are a few questions you can ask yourself after you have created your budget. Where can I save money? It is not uncommon to look back at your budget and say, I spent $100 on that? Listing your expenditures can be a real wake-up call for people. Sometimes you don't realize how much you are really spending until you see a large 3-digit number staring you in the face. This is a good opportunity to make the decision to dial back your spending on certain variable expenses. The next question you need to ask is, do my expenses reflect my financial goals? Are you on track to save $500 by June? Are your shopping habits preventing you from being on track to pay off your credit card by the end of the year? Could your daily Starbucks purchases be directed to your daughter's college savings account? If your expenses are not consistent with your financial goals, you may need to go back and make some changes to your budget. Are there ways I can increase my income? One misconception about creating a budget is that you just need to keep cutting things until your budget balances. While it's true that you may need to trim some of your monthly expenses, don't forget that you could also explore ways to make more money, whether it's driving for Uber a couple days each week or picking up a part-time job. It may be necessary to increase your income. Here are a few other tips to keep in mind when creating your budget. Start an emergency fund. An emergency fund can be used for unexpected items such as car repairs, medical bills, or income in the event that you lose your job. It is recommended that your emergency fund be enough to equal about 3 to 6 months worth of income. Ensure everyone involved is on the same page. Budget planning should include spouses, partners, and roommates, especially if you all share in making purchases using the same pool of income. The budget should be realistic for everyone involved, and there should be 100% buy-in for all parties. You should also consider telling friends and family about your budget so they can help keep you accountable. Make changes to your budget when needed. Your budget should not be set in stone. If your budget results do not match your needs or expectations, make whatever changes are necessary. Don't set yourself up for failure. Consider gradually cutting back on things that are a regular part of your daily life instead of stopping those behaviors cold turkey. For example, if you stop on the way to work every day for a breakfast sandwich or a cappuccino, consider cutting back from 5 days a week to 3 days a week. How much money could you save if you instead bought a box of granola bars or brewed some coffee at home? If you set restrictions too high and too soon, you may have a hard time following your budget, and you may be tempted to give up altogether. Apply your raises wisely. If you get a pay raise at work, consider putting that extra income toward paying off your student loans, your credit cards, or putting it toward your child's college fund. The sooner you pay off your debt, the more money you can save for the future. And finally, be mindful of holiday spending. So one good thing about the holidays is that they come at the same time every year, and that means you can prepare your budget accordingly. People generally spend more money during the month of December, so plan for that in your budget. That may mean cutting your spending a little bit each month and the months leading up to December to give yourself a spending cushion. Also, instead of buying everything at the last minute, consider starting your holiday shopping earlier in the year so you have time to take advantage of sales. And before we wrap up, I just want to take a moment to talk about my department here at UMA and some of the services that we offer. I'm one of 2 managers in the Financial Literacy Services Department, and the key focus of our team is promoting fiscal responsibility with current and former UMA students. We are a lifetime resource for students who have questions about their student loans. We know that student loans can be confusing, so if you have any questions about your repayment plan options, need help understanding paperwork from your student loan servicer, or if you're having trouble making a student loan payment, my team is here to assist. These are services that we offer at no cost to you as current and former UMA students. Also, there are a lot of student loan scams on the internet these days, and you will more than likely come across companies that claim to be able to have your loans forgiven or even discharged. One important rule to remember is that you should only speak to your school or to your student loan servicer about your student loans. So another thing, kind of a good rule of thumb to follow is that if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. So if you have questions about anything you receive in the mail or see on social media regarding student loans, please give our office a call so we can help verify their validity. And so finally, before we move into the question and answer session, let's summarize some of the stuff we went over today. First of all, set SMART financial goals. Those are specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-based. Collect your receipts and keep them in a central location until it is time to create your budget. Utilize budgeting templates, smartphone apps, or pen and paper to keep track of your budget. Evaluate your budget every so often and determine where you might be able to save money and if your expenses reflect your financial goals and if there's any way that you could possibly increase your income. It is recommended that your emergency fund be enough to equal about 3 to 6 months worth of income. And finally, keep all members of the household included on creating and evaluating your budget.
Great tips, Jonathan. Thank you for presenting that information on budgeting. So like you said, before we move into the question and answer session, we did want to ask everybody to leave us a quick review if you haven't done so at ultimatemedical.edu/Google. We would love to hear your feedback on your UMA experience. We've got a few questions already. So before we get into those, I also wanted to reiterate that link from earlier. We've had a few people ask. So it was www.ultimatemedical.edu/alumni/financial/tools-for-alumni/. And then also we wanted to provide you guys with Jonathan's department contact information. So it's on the screen, and it's 888-205-2170, or you can email them at financialliteracy@ultimatemedical.edu. Again, that's financialliteracy@ultimatemedical.edu, or calling them at 888-205-2170. So let's move into our question and answer session. So the first question we've got here is, what do you do in a situation where you have set your SMART goals, but something comes up and you're unable to obtain them?
Well, that's a great question, and we all know that life happens. There's no real way to avoid some of those unexpected things that pop up. I would say in that case, I would recommend, I think the most important thing is to not give up on your budget. If you have to tweak your goals, you know that those things do come up during the year, but I think the key is just to be flexible, and if you realize one of your goals is not achievable, it doesn't mean you need to throw in the towel. It just needs to, it's another chance to go back and look through your budget again. Try to replace that goal with another goal that is attainable, and just try to keep yourself accountable and on track to reach those other goals that you have come up with. But not giving up is definitely, I think, is the key takeaway there.
Okay, great. So on that note, do you have any advice on sticking to your budget?
Well, I think a good way to stick to your budget is a big way is accountability. If you've got other people that are involved in the budget in the household, kind of reviewing that budget with them periodically or regularly, so everybody knows where you are at any given point in time. Definitely save your receipts. I know it's so easy just to say no thanks to a receipt or to toss it out, but it is really important to, if you're using an app for your bank, those apps nowadays are pretty good at categorizing your purchases and things like that. But especially if you're paying with cash, you always save your receipts. Keep a listing of everything that you're spending just to make sure at the end of the month that you're going back through to see if you are, especially with those variable expenses, that you're keeping them in line with what you say you're going to do. If you find yourself having a hard time doing that, I recommend going back through even some of your fixed expenses. Look at your cable bill. Do you need all those channels? Look at your cell phone bill. Do you need all the services that you're paying for? Are there ways to save money?
Okay, so another question. Can you give any tips on someone that's employed and is trying to work on a budget?
Okay, so unemployed and working on a budget. Well, I think some of the key foundations there still stand. Your net income. I don't know if you're getting any kind of public assistance, or if you are getting any kind of public assistance or anything of the like. Put that in your budget in place of your net income, because if there's any resources there, definitely you're still, at the end of the day, you're looking at how much money is coming in and how much money is coming out. So coupon cutting, checking for deals in the paper if you're going to do any grocery shopping, things like that. Student loans is my bread and butter here at UMA, so that's what I spend all my time doing day in and day out. So also know that there are different repayment plan options out there for your student loans. So when you get your bills in the mail, if it looks like you're going to have a hard time making that monthly payment, at the end of the day, the government, they want to be able to get their student loan, the loans that they've lent out, they want to get paid back essentially. So they do have a lot of options out there for students that might be struggling to make a payment, or there are ways you can change your payment amount or maybe temporarily postpone a payment. But it's definitely good to get those loans paid off, but just know that there are options out there when it does come to your student loans, and you can call us, and we help students every day look for options to help them successfully pay back loans and kind of get through those tough spots in life, because we know it happens to everybody at some point along the line.
So similar to that question, how do you budget for a variable income?
So variable income, so I'm assuming that means maybe you don't get a steady paycheck every month, or maybe the amounts do fluctuate from time to time. I would think of someone who's maybe waiting tables at a restaurant. That might be a position where from week to week your income could change. So in those cases, what I would recommend doing is finding some kind of baseline, maybe on the low end. So there might be some months where you're getting a lot more money than other months, but find one of those months where it's like one of the worst months or one of the lowest months that you have, and set that as your baseline for every single month. If the money's not coming in at a consistent rate throughout the month, it's just very important to prioritize your expenditures. So of course, food, housing, clothing for you and your family, that's always got to come first before you start paying off those other bills. So as that first paycheck comes in the month, put that toward make sure that your rent or your house, your mortgage payment is paid. Make sure there's food on the table, and then as the next check comes in, then start putting that towards your fixed and variable expenses. But prioritizing is very important in those cases. And then like I said, you've got that lower end on your baseline. So when you have those better months, that's just extra money that you can either put towards a credit card payment to pay that down, or a little extra to put it into savings.
Okay, great. The next question that we received is, what's the best way to save money when you owe bills, or you have student loans that need to be paid off? So basically, how can you prioritize saving versus paying down debt?
Good question. So it's going to be a little bit different, I think, for everybody. It could be a little bit situational, depending on what kind of debt you have. If you're sitting on a lot of credit card debt versus a car payment and a house payment, those types of loans are going to carry different interest rates with them. So if you're sitting on a credit card that's got a pretty high interest rate, that's something that you probably want to target first before you let's say you've got a credit card that's 17-18% interest rate, and you've got a car loan that's, let's say, 5%. And even if the balances on those are both about the same, it's definitely good to target those credit card. If you've got any extra money, focus on paying down the debt with a higher interest rate first before you look at trying to pay your car off. That's at the end of the day, your bills have to get paid, of course. And this may go back to also taking a hard look at your variable expenses. Look at those things that might not be necessities, your cable, your cell phone, those types of things. Look around, shop around, see if there people always have deals. They're always happy to have people switch carriers. That might be a good opportunity if you find that you're not able to get things paid off, is just to go back to the budget again, see if any of those expenses could be modified, maybe pay a little less for one of those services, and you can put that money toward paying off some debt.
Great. So the next question is, what exactly is an emergency fund?
So an emergency fund, we kind of talked about, it needs to be about 3 to 6 months. That's what a lot of experts recommend. And really, that emergency fund comes into play when you have something big and unexpected happen in your life. Like if the car breaks down, those expenses can really add up quickly when you take that car to the mechanic, or if you lose your job unexpectedly. What's your first instinct when you've got bills that need to be paid right away, right? Your car breaks down, you got to make it to work. If you don't have anybody to lend you that money, generally people are going to go and pay for that on a credit card so they can, get to work the next day. That emergency fund is nice because it's there to cover that as an alternative to putting something on a credit card. Because once you start building that credit card debt, it can be like swimming upstream to kind of get on top of it. So that's really, I think, where the emergency fund comes in handy the most. It's a good alternative. It's a great alternative to putting things on a credit card.
All right. How can I download a guide for spending, or do you know if there are any guides for spending out there?
Well, I assume there's probably a lot of resources on the internet. I haven't specifically looked for like a spending guide, but I think if you can imagine it, it probably exists on the internet somewhere. So I would definitely take advantage of surfing the web and seeing if there are some guides out there to maybe managing your spending a little bit better.
Perfect. The next question that we have, how can I show my family member how to budget their bills?
Well, I think a lot of this is probably going to boil down to personality. Are you talking to a teenager? Are you talking to an older relative that's kind of set in their ways? It's probably going to be a little bit situational. But I think it's important just to be honest with them about why budgeting is important to you. I think it's a way important to show that person that you care about them. Obviously, when you're talking about finances, it's a time can make people kind of clam up or be uncomfortable, especially maybe if they're not in a great shape of where they need to be. But I think if you're communicating that their best interest is what you have in mind, should definitely help that conversation go smoothly. Plus, also, if you've done some of that yourself and have already kind of paved the way, I think it takes a lot of the guesswork and the uncertainty out of it. And I think when you boil it down, it really just is. I think the biggest hurdle to overcome is that it might be new to people, and things that are not known to us or unfamiliar to us are things that we may naturally kind of shy away from. So I think if you've already kind of laid the groundwork for yourself, it might kind of help that door open up a little more smoothly for you.
How much should I be saving for retirement?
Another good question, and this one also I would say can be pretty situational, depending on a couple factors. One, how old are you? Are you close to retiring? Are you only a few years out of high school? That's going to make a big difference on how much you save and in what types of retirement funds you're saving in. My specialty is with student loans, so I'm not an expert on retirement. But I will say at the very least, if you've got an employer that offers a 401k plan, definitely take advantage of that. Make sure you're maximizing the amount of money you can save through your company through the 401k. Beyond that, I would say, again, it's a little out of my wheelhouse, but depending on your situation, what kind of lifestyle you're looking to have after you retire, the answer is going to be a little bit different for everybody. So there's definitely some good resources online. Find some calculators on saving for retirement, but I'd also recommend talking to a retirement specialist who can really understand what your needs are for retirement and make sure you're getting enough money put away for you when that day rolls around. So. Good question.
All right, great. So we've got a few minutes left, and we have one question. If anybody else has a question, feel free to send it in right now. We'll try and get it covered before the webinar ends. But right now, so the question is, what if you have kids? How can you budget money that way? Do you have any advice?
Well, I have kids myself, so I know that it definitely spending a lot more money now than I did 5 years ago before I had my two kids. So I know it can definitely be a struggle. I think the hardest part, I'll speak for myself, the hardest part was just understanding that you've got people in your life that are now a priority. So a lot of the expenses that I would call non-crucial or more just entertainment type of things, we definitely changed our lifestyle quite a bit. Not spending as much on ourselves, not spending as much to definitely stopped going out to eat as much as we used to, because now we've got extra mouths to feed at the restaurant, so restaurant bills get a lot higher. We're buying diapers and all the expensive baby food and formula that goes along with that. So it adds up in a hurry. So I think the biggest hurdle to overcome there is just kind of taking the back seat when it comes to priority and putting their needs first. And again, it kind of comes back to prioritizing what's the most important. Do you have a roof over everyone's head? Is there food on the table? Are everybody clothed adequately? And after that, then you can start going into to the other types of things and deciding what's important, what's not important. Shopping for when it comes to food, shopping for deals, maybe shopping at a grocery store where the food's less expensive. Same thing with clothing. Going to the Goodwill or the Salvation Army, finding thrift stores where you can still get some nice deals that are a lot less expensive than dropping a lot of money at a more high-end department store when you're trying to get everybody dressed for school and whatnot. So definitely it's a struggle. So I can relate to that for sure.
Okay, great. So we're about out of time. We actually did receive quite a few more questions. So we'll follow up with those after the webinar ends, but we'll close with this question. Do you recommend making a list of your expenses as one of the best ways to budget?
Yeah, I think the best starting point is just getting everything on paper and seeing what the reality of the situation is. I think checkbooks are, for the most part, a thing of the past. Not a lot of people carry checkbooks. I think I write one check a month. So I think the old days of balancing a checkbook, the traditional way are, I don't see a lot of that happening. But so I think that puts people at a higher risk of kind of losing track of what they're spending, especially when everything is digital. A lot of people are just getting receipts emailed to them anymore when they go to stores. So really keeping track and disciplining yourself to save those receipts, to record your purchases, and looking at everything, like I said, when you start seeing things on paper and you start seeing those 3-digit numbers popping up, it is a real wake-up call. Things might be a little uncomfortable at first once you put that first monthly budget together, but it's one of those things that you just kind of fall into that routine. I'm not going out to dinner 4 times a week. I'm only going out once on the weekends, and that's our time to treat ourselves, or cutting back on those Starbucks visits. It'll feel a little strange at first, but like anything, once you get into the rhythm, it just becomes natural. But yeah, I think looking at your income, looking at all those expenses, and that's a good place where look at those goals and what kind of things do you need to trim to make those goals a reality. And you'll be thanking yourself years down the road when you do that for sure.
All right, wonderful answers. Before we wrap up, I did just want to mention one comment that we had from one of our attendees that I thought was great advice. So her advice for budgeting and when you want to buy something is to wait for the sale, and to also remember if it's on sale once, it will be on sale again. So we'll close with that advice. We do want to remind you guys that you can reach out to Jonathan or the Financial Literacy Services Department at any time by calling or emailing, and we thank you guys for attending the webinar. We hope that you have a great rest of your day.